Okay, week 3, streamside fly tying 2025. We're going to be doing the 20-incher. Pretty standard. I'm going to be doing it slightly different than what we did in class on Monday. You can see that I've added some lead wire here. I want this one to be a little bit heavier, and that's 015 lead wire, pretty thin. Not adding a lot of weight, just, you know, this one I'm going to be fishing a little deeper. So I put a little bit of lead on there, started my thread. I'm going to essentially, if you're going to add lead, it kind of helps to build a little ramp up to it. And then I'm going to lightly cover this with thread. It doesn't have to be crazy. The other thing that the lead's going to do is going to help kind of bulk out the thorax area, because we are going to brush it out and make it a little spiky. But again, I'm going to take my thread back to where right in between the barb and the point, and try not to catch the point with your thread. You can see how it cut some of the strands there. You got to be careful. I'm going to build just a little ball out of thread. You could do dubbing if you wanted to, but it's not that big of an issue. I just want a little ball there. And we're going to take our tail material, which is classic biot for your stoneflies. I'm going to cut 2 off of the stem here. And I cut them off. You can see I've got 2 there. I'm going to take one of these, I'm going to flip it over because I want them facing in opposite directions as far as the curve goes. And I'll show you that here in a second. So I want them curving away from each other. And I'm going to line up my tips, pinch those together in my right hand, slide it right on top of the hook shank. Gauge how long you want your tails. I want them a little longer than a gap, a hook gap, but you know, wherever you want it, it's really up to you. Do a couple wraps, then pull tight, let go, take a look, make sure they're where I want them. They are. I'm going to start wrapping these forwards just to bind them in, make sure they're not going anywhere. They roll around the hook shank, I'm not too worried about that. I am going to come in and cut the waist off and then tie that down. And before I move my thread back, I'm going to take my ribbing material, which we're using copper wire here, and I'm going to capture that up here and tie that in on my side of the hook. Doesn't really matter what side. I tend to do my side so I can see where it is, make sure it's going where I want it. And we're just going to let that hang out the back. And for our body, we're going to use, you can use anywhere from 3 to 4, depending on how big or how long this fly is. You can use 5 or 6 if you want. Peacock herls. I'm gonna get 4 here, and I'm gonna kind of align the tips. Now the tips of this are very fragile, so I'm gonna break off about 1 inch. These are fairly long. Break off about 1 inch, get down to a stem that's a little bit thicker, a little more durable, and I'm going to tie those in. Again, doesn't have to be super pretty because these are big, bushy fibered peacock herls. Now, big thing with this, when you're ribbing, you want your rib and your body material to go in opposite directions. So normally I would tie over and away. With this body, I'm going to tie under and away, and you'll see why here. And as I wrap forward, it's going to make sure I'm covering all of my thread wraps. And one thing you'll notice, if you're wrapping under and away with the material, But over and away with your thread, what'll happen when you go to capture it is your body material kind of wants to unwind itself because you're pushing it backwards when you wrap over. So you really want to make sure you get it tied in nice and tight. You can see I took this body pretty far up, and we're actually going to cover a lot of that with dubbing. So I'm not too concerned about, we want that kind of bulky up front in the thorax area. So once I get that captured, cut those off. And now with tying this in on my side, that allows me to do one full wrap around the back before I pick my angle and wrap this, counter wrap this, I should say, forwards. 4, get about 5 turns. That 5th turn is probably going to get covered up with dubbing, so again, not super important. I'm going to capture that a few times, bend it back, put some thread in front, and now I'm going to keep tension on this thread, and I'm going to bend this wire backwards and then forwards, and I'm just going to wiggle it around. You can helicopter it in circles rather than dulling a nice pair of scissors. They tend to break off cleaner that way too. And now I'm going to wrap backwards over all this that I just put on the hook. I'm going to go about 1/3 of the way back. These stoneflies have a fairly large thorax where all their wing cases are, and we're going to get ready to do that. Hold on one second. I forgot my wing case material. All right, so if you remember your wing case material, we're going to use turkey tail. You can use different colors if you want. There's obviously different kinds of, there's Ozark turkey tails, there's cinnamon tip turkey tails. This is a cinnamon tip. The modeling's nice. You see that in a lot of stoneflies. This one you can see had some bugs or some flight wear over here, so I'm going to cut that tip end off. And I've got this cut at about, again, a hook gap in width. I'm going to put this right on top. I'm going to pinch this down. I want to keep it as wide as possible. They tend to want to get narrower when you tie them in, so be careful with that. There we go. And then I'm going to take a partridge feather. I've got a little feather here. And to do these legs, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull, I'm going to find the length I want. I'm going to pull everything below it off. And then I'm going to decide how many legs I want. Now, if you want to be super realistic, you can put 3 on each side. I'm going to do, I don't know, however much that is, however long that is. And I'm going to flip it over. You can see this is kind of curved. I want the curve facing up. I'm going to tie this in right at that triangle. Tie it down. Those are going to be our legs. And I'm going to come in. You can see everything's pretty much on top. You can finagle it a little bit when you're folding them over to tie them in and actually form the legs. For now, I'm going to call that good. And I'm using a natural hare's ear blend of dubbing here. Call it light hare's ear. get rid of this guy. And again, you want this kind of bulky, but I would always caution you to start with a little and add more, because it's a whole lot easier to add than it is to take off. I'm going to create a little noodle here. Again, doesn't look like a lot, but you'll see when I'll do a couple layers of this even. So I'm going to go all the way up to the bead, work my way back, and almost wrap over the top a little bit of the legs there. Because what'll happen, you'll end up with a weird empty space if you don't. And go a little bit more. Yeah, I want a little bit more dubbing than that. You can see it's all one level at this point. I want the thorax area to be significantly thicker. You do that by adding more dubbing. Again, hold your legs back out of the way so you don't. All right, that'll be good. And when you're doing the dubbing, if you pull your legs back, it'll help you not trap them down. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, grab this stem, pull my legs over the top, hold them in place, get 1, 2 loose wraps, pull my stem back to where I want it, tighten, a couple more good wraps. I'm going to do the same thing with my wing case. And this is going to help hold our legs in place. Just like so. Couple wraps over the top. Couple wraps in front. Come in with your scissors. Try to cut pretty close. Again, pull our legs back out of the way. If you want, you can use like in class, I was using a hot orange thread just to give it a little hot spot. I like this wine colored thread a lot. I think it looks pretty good. So I'm just going to take my whip finish tool now and do a couple whip finishes. Those of you in class know that I'm not a big fan of head cement or anything like that, because it inevitably, if you don't lose it and the fly comes apart, you can reuse your hooks, but I don't know. It can leave a weird bump and stuff. But anyways, that's me being weird. That is your basic 20-incher. You've got legs, nice wing case. This one's split a little bit, which is okay. And you can come in with a piece of Velcro or a dubbing brush. I left mine out somewhere else, so I'm just going to use the tip of my whip finish tool, a little hook here. I'm going to pick out the bottom a little bit just to make it buggier. And there we go. That is a variation of the 20-incher.